Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. First of all, let me introduce myself. My name is Ika Nurjana, student number 220141701. I'm from English Education 2017, Faculty of Language and Art, Universitas Negeri Semarang. This video is made to requirement for the degree of Sarjana Pendidikan in English Language Education. And my final project entitled Improving Students' Vocabulary by Using K English Application, a quasi-experimental research of the 8th grade students of SMP and 4 Cepu. Before going to presentation, let me show the table of contents. There are 5 chapters in my final project. The first is chapter 1, Introduction, consists of background of the study, reasons for choosing the topic, and then research question, objective of the study, significance of the study, and scope of the study. The chapter 2 is reviews of related literature, consists of reviews of the previous study, theoretical reviews, and theoretical framework. And the chapter 3 is research methodology, consists of research design, research sites, population and sample, research variable, hypothesis, research instrument, methods of collecting the data, and methods of analyzing the data. The chapter 4, results and discussion, consists of results and discussion. The last is chapter 5, conclusion and suggestion, consists of conclusion and suggestion. And then the last is reference and appendix. Okay, the first is chapter 1, Introduction, background of the study. English is the second language in the world and it becomes one of the most popular foreign languages for Indonesian people. As Ujian 2014 mentioned that language educators have long used for basic language skill, concept for that sometimes known as macro skills. They are writing, reading, listening, and then speaking. And the micro skills are the basic English. They are vocabulary, pronunciation, and grammar. And then the vocabulary is the most important aspect that should be mastered in the learning language. As the law for 1997 in Indriati 2014 described learning vocabulary as the essential part of language mastery, since it would be impossible to understand or produce a language without vocabulary knowledge. In the era of globalization, technology is getting more sophisticated, especially for education. Mobile Assist a Learning Language, or MELL, is technology utilized for outdoor and indoor activities in school to support the education goals towards enhancing students' achievement and differentiation of learning needs. And then MELL relates to the utilization of mobile phone, particularly using certain application to learn and comprehend the target language, as Mianah and Nezara said in 2021. And based on the condition in junior high school for Cepu, English is difficult to be mastered because some students still have lack of vocabulary. For the method or technology for teaching and learning vocabulary use conventional techniques such as memorizing the word and then looking for the word in the dictionary. So it can make the students feel bored in learning English. So I took a Cake English application as the media of my research because it's one of the existing application and the newest popular Android mobile application for learning English. Next is the reason for choosing the topic. First is because vocabulary is the main base of language and one of the elements of communication with others. So most of the students think mastering English is hard to be achieved when the problem lies in their limited range of vocabulary. The second is the students were found to be bored in learning vocabulary because of in the school they only learn about vocabulary by using the conventional methods such as looking for the word in the dictionary and memorizing the word. And the third is most of previous studies investigated that most students still had a limited range of vocabulary that use monotonous ways to learn vocabulary. So the present study attempts to explain how to implement Cake English application in learning vocabulary to potential if there is any difference assist in the vocabulary acquired by the students pre and post Cake English application. Next is research question and the objective of the study. First is how to implement Cake English application in learning vocabulary. It is to explain how to implement Cake English application in learning vocabulary. The second is there any difference of the student's vocabulary before and after achieving Cake English application? This is to find out whether there is any difference of the student's vocabulary before and after achieving Cake English application. And then the significance of the study. There are three of significance of the studies. First is theoretical. This study can improve the theoretical framework that technology can improve students' vocabulary. The second is practically. For the English teachers, this study can give the idea and the additional information in learning and teaching English efficiently, especially in learning vocabulary. And then for the students, this research is expected to motivate them to study English, especially to mastering vocabulary in outside and then inside the classroom. And then the last is pedagogically. The researcher would like to provide benefits to the education to improve English vocabulary comprehension. And then the scope of the study. First is the study tells about how to implement or use the Cake English application in improving vocabulary in the students. And the second is the study tells about vocabulary achieved by the students in terms of teaching vocabulary by using Cake English application and the conventional methods. And then we are going to the chapter 2, review of related literature. The first is a review of previous study. There are 4 previous studies that support my research. The first is the students' impressions of EFL, vocabulary learning through mobile application by Klimova and Polakova 2020. The second is the utilization of Cake English application to teach high school students how to speak by Yanti 2020. The third is the students' cognition toward the utilization of Cake English application for the oral skills in the first grade students is in SMA Negeri 1 Jambi by Dewi Munawaroh and Hapipah 2021. The last is the use of mobile technology to learn vocabulary of a foreign language by Akcha 2012. Another theoretical review, the first is Cake English application. This application is the most popular Android mobile application and it's for English learning application for Android and iOS users to learn English in all ages. And it was developed in South Korea because it was published by Place Corporation. There are two versions in this application. The first is the latest version of Cake English application for free 2.4.1 was updated on December 17, 2019, and then the new version of this application is 3.2.2 version is released on the April 4, 2021, and this is the screen of the Cake English application. The second is vocabulary. According to the Richard and Renandia 2002 page 255, state that basic part of language ability, which is fundamental for students to know how to listen, speak, write, and then to read is vocabulary. And it can be concluded that the vocabulary is the key of learning language. So we can express what we will say if we will have too many vocabularies. And learning language is not only we have memorize it, but also we practice to use the vocabulary in some sentence and so we can express what we will say well. Next is MALL, Mobile Assist Language Learning. It refers to the use of mobile technology in the learning language. It's developed from the mobile learning and can be seen as a specialization of that field, based on Fiber O and Greenland 2013. In this globalization, technology is very important to be used, especially in education. It can provide to change the knowledge, skills, attitudes through interaction and enables learners to give support, motivation, and etc. And then MALL address how to use the language learning mobile technology, so the students will be enjoying in learning language. Next is the theoretical framework, improving students' vocabulary. So the first is tryout. This is from another class. And then during the pre-test for the experimental group and the control group. And then the treatment will be given from the conventional methods and Cake English application. And then the post-test control group and experimental group. And then comparing the data from the control group's post-test mean score and the experimental group post-test mean score. So we can know to find out whether or not there is any difference of the student's vocabulary before and after achieving Cake English application. Next, we are going to the chapter 3, research methodology. The first is research design. I use quantitative research because consisting of numbers can be analyzing according to the statistical calculation. And then according to the Tuchman to 1978, the term quasi-experimental design might be defined as an experimental design that is executed partly, not fully experimental. It controls only some source of internal invalidity. And this is the design of a quasi-experimental research in my study. Based on the Cook and Wong 2008 citing Alasu, Tari, Bigman, and Brennan, there are pre-tests and then given the treatment, and the last is post-test. And then next is research sites. In this study, the research was conducted in junior high school for Cepu, Central Java, Indonesia, and it located at Cepu Randu Blatung Highway, kilometers 3.5, Johor Mulyorejo, Cepu Subdistrict, Blora, Regency, Central Java. In this study, the population is the 8th grade students of junior high school for Cepu in the academic year 2021 to 2022. They were 8A to 8D, and its class consists of 30 to 35 students. And the sample, the two classes were chosen as the research sample. They are 8C as the experimental group, and the 8F class was the control group. And then the research variable, the independent variable is the K English application, and then the dependent variable is the student's score on vocabulary upgrade as the dependent variable. And then the hypothesis, the alternative hypothesis, Cake English application can improve students' vocabulary. And then the null hypothesis, Cake English application cannot improve the students' vocabulary. Next is research instrument. There are three tests. First is trial, the second is pre-test, and the last is post-test. Starting from the trial, we are to find the validity of the test because it's to measure whether or not the instrument is valid. The second is reliability of the test. This is to measurement in the different condition using the assessment process is what made reliability based on the Beckman 2004 set. The third is difficulty of the test. It's to solving the test items in highly easy. It cannot encourage the students to solve the test. The last is discriminating power of the test. It's to know how great the quality of the test items identifies or intent difference to students' achievement levels based on Arikunto 2013. Next is methods of collecting the data. The first is pretest. I use a matching form question. The second is treatment, conventional methods from the control group, and then the Cake English application for the experimental group. The last is post-test. I use matching form question, same with the pretest. The last is methods of analyzing the data. I use IBM SPSS program 26 version. The first is to know the normality because the tests were applied to examine the pre-test and post-test distribution, both groups, whether or not they were done normally in the process. The second is homogeneity, test conducted to find the same variant in the data. And the third is U-test statistical analysis based Kasuya 2001 states that the man-with U-test is one of the most commonly used tests in non-parametric statistical tests. The next is we are going to the chapter 4. This is the point of my research, results and discussion. The results from the tryout 8B class on Monday, April 26, 2021. The validity based on the table, we can be conclude that the presenting validity test table implies 10 invalid items and then the 40 valid items. The second is reliability. This is the reliability value of alpha Cronbach, and based on the results in the table, in my data, the table demonstrates the reliability test obtained the value of all variable greater than 0.70. According to the criteria, it could be said that to be reliable. Next is the difficulty of the test. And this is the difficulty index from Samsudin 2012. And this is the table, the results of my data. It can be concluded that the table above pointed out there are 4 easy items and 37 medium items and 9 difficult items. Next is discriminating of the test, and this is the table index of discriminating from Hendriana and Sumarno 2014. And this is the table from my data. The results in the table can be concluded that from 50 matching form question present that there are 9 items in the poor category and then 18 items in the medium level and 23 items are included in the good category and 0 item is in the excellent category. In this study, I conducted the pre-test, treatment, and post-test in the same day, but in the different time. But each class divided into 2 classes because of the condition of COVID-19. So we should obey the rules of health protocol. And this is the results of pre-test and post-test. The first is normality test. Based on the table, we can conclude that pre-test and post-test data from the experimental and control group in the Kolmogorov group Smirnov are normally distributed. The data and pre-test in the post-test in the both experiment and control group from the sufferer Wilk that the pre-test experiment and post-test control are normally distributed, while the post-test experiment and pre-test control are not normally distributed. Thus, the results of the data that the researchers should continue a research analyzing using non-parametric statistical analysis because of based on the opinion of Marchali 2015 in the page 44. If the significant greater than 0.05, then the data is normally distributed. On the opposite, if the significance of the smaller than 0.05, then the data was not normally distributed. This is the results of a homogeneity test, the Will-Jackson-Fine-Rank test of homogeneity. Based on the table, we can be concluded based on the computation using SPSS 26, the sign based on the main value is 0.377 greater than 0.05. Thus, it can be concluded that the data has the same variance or homogeneous. And this is the hypothesis test, Will-Jackson sign ranks test of the pre and post experimental test. Based on the table, we can know that the negative ranks of the post-test values are smaller than the pre-experimental values. It is two samples. It means that two students experiencing a decrease in terms of learning outcomes. And the mean rank is 5.25 and the sum of rank is 10.50. And the positive rank of the post-experimental value is greater than the pre-experimental value. They are 29 samples. It means that 29 students experiencing an increase in terms of learning outcomes. The main rank is 16.74 and the sum of rank is 485.550. And the types of the similarity of the pre-test and the post-test scores. There is only one sample becoming in the value of the test, so it can be concluded that there is same value between the pre-test and post-test. Based on the table before, this is the conclusion of the Richardson test. The Z count is negative 4.660 and the assigned significant total is 0.0. Therefore, the difference occur in the results of the post-test experimental group of the pre-experimental group. Thus, alternative hypothesis is accepted. Next is the descriptive statistic data of the pre and post experiment. This is the results in the table, and we can conclude that the pre-experimental group processed an average value of 38.0469, while the post-experimental group has an average value of 70.85. Therefore, the conclusion is there is an effect arising between the pre-experiment and post-experiment. Next table is the Will-Jackson sign ranks of test of the pre and post control data. In this way, we can be conclude that negative ranks of the post experiment value is smaller than the pre-experimental value. It's two samples. It means that two students incurring a decrease in terms of learning outcomes from the pre-control and post-control values. The mean rank is 6.25 and the sum of rank is 12.50. And the positive ranks of the post-control values is greater than the pre-control value. There are 28 samples. It means that 28 students encouraged in increasing in terms of learning outcomes. And the mean rank is 16.16 and the sum of rank is 452.50. And the test is the similarity of the pre-test and the post-test score. The result is a zero sample. It means that no same values occurs of arising between the pre-test and post-test. Next is this is the table based on the table before, the conclusion of the Richardson test based on the control data. The results of the Richardson test is the pre-control and post-control group that Z count is negative 4.528 and the sum significant total is 0.0. It shows that the significant value is zero point 0.0 is smaller than 0.05. And it can be concluded that there are differences in results in the pre-control and post-control group. This is the descriptive statistic data of the pre and post control. Based on the table, we can be conclude that the average value of the pre-control group was 31.50, while the post-control group had an average value that is 61.75. So there is an effect arising between post-control and pre-control. And the results above shows that the average value after the treatment in the control group is greater than the average value before and the treatment. Thus, the control and the experimental groups experiencing an increase. And this is we are going to the U-test of pre-test data and part-test of man-Whitney U-test. Based on the data in the table, we can know that the assigned significant total is 0.035. This value is clearly smaller than 0.05. Therefore, the conclusion drawn is that there is a difference between the learning outcomes of the experimental group and the control group before being given in the treatment. This is the U-test of the post-test data and part-test of the man-Whitney U-test. Based on the table, we know that the assigned significant total is 0.031. This value is smaller than 0.05. We can be conclude that there's a difference in terms of learning outcomes between the control group and experimental group after the treatment is given. The last is discussion. In this discussion, we can be conclude that the point out the implementation of Cake English application to learn vocabulary. It gave a good effect to the students to learn about vocabulary. And then the students were easy to learn English and enjoy to learn English by the mobile phone in the Cake English application inside and outside the classroom. And then I conducted the study to find whether the mobile phone application can assist the students to learn vocabulary effectively or not. And the results, the mobile phone application are very effective for the student in learning English, especially in learning vocabulary because this application can achieve increase in the students' vocabulary. It means that effective techniques are importantly used in teaching and learning vocabulary. And now we are going to the last chapter, chapter 5, conclusion and suggestion. The first is conclusion. Firstly, the implementation of using Cake English application in learning vocabulary has a good effect to the students in learning vocabulary, so they feel enjoy to learn English. And then the secondly, based on the pre-test and post-test score, it can be concluded that this condition implies there is an effect between the pre-test and post-test in experiment before and after achieving the treatment. The next conclusion, based on the man-Whitney U-test, we can know the utilization of English application to teach and learn English vocabulary is an effective and helpful technique. Besides, it can assist students in solving various issues in learning and comprehend the English. The last is suggestion. From the theoretically, the findings of this study are expected to comprehend the theoretical framework that technology could escalate or increase the students' capability in terms of vocabulary. So I hope the next researcher can find out another mobile phone and another application. And also the instrument can use a qualitative and also the quantitative based on the curriculum. And the second is practically. In this study, purpose to give extend idea and information in learning and teaching English efficiently and encourage students to learn English by mastering vocabulary by using Cake English application. The last is pedagogically. It's expected to be useful for English teacher, and therefore some limitation of the study, such as I should prepare everything well to support the implementation of Cake English application, and the students should learn vocabulary, mention the meaning of some words, and then answer the question, and I give the response to them. Okay, those all about my presentation in the final project. Thank you very much. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.